Nvidia GPUs are finally in stock where you can actually order them online or walk into a store and buy one without being in some outrageously long queue. But does that mean that now is the perfect time to build a computer? Is that everything we've been waiting for is just for GPUs to be in stock? I'm going to tell you, not so fast. It's a little bit complicated. You're going to want to watch the whole video because there are many factors at play. Did you remember that CPU prices are historically pretty low right now with like Ryzen 5000? So that's one side of the PC building. What about the GPU pricing? Historically, it's still extremely high. Even though they are in stock and most likely you don't have to go to your friendly neighborhood scalper to be able to buy one now, you're still going to be paying a lot more money. Nvidia, in fact, wants to prepare you to pay more money for RTX 4000. That's going to be another factor coming up. Should you wait for the new GPUs? So today, we're going to discuss all of these. Should you build the PC now or even upgrade your existing PC? So let's discuss the first problem, GPU availability. For the last 2 years, this has been one of the worst times to actually even try to buy a GPU. Either you would have to get lucky and maybe like a Best Buy drop, maybe you were able to get a Newegg shuffle, maybe early on you were able to get one from Nvidia's website. Now, during the last several weeks, we have seen a marked change in the GPU market. It means that if you go to a local store, if you happen to be lucky and have one in the US, like Micro Center or even Best Buy if you check online, or if you check on Newegg and maybe even B&H, Amazon, some places that sell GPUs, you have a much higher chance. And of course, it's not always. You can still search right now and not find the GPU that you want, so things aren't perfect, of course. It's just easier now than it was around the same time last year. I remember last year when you searched for a GPU, you found absolutely nothing. You had to wait for one of these magical doors to open, which would be like an online drop, basically. Some places have a physical drop like Best Buy, but very, very few and far between. And then if you search on a secondhand market like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, all of the GPUs were outrageously priced, especially when we got into May. I remember May. I don't even have to look this up. I remember the way it spiked. If you look at any graph, because the Ethereum price also coincided, of course, with the GPU price hike, it was a pretty massive spike in the pricing of GPUs. For example, an RTX 3080 was as high as $2,000 to $2,100 from its $700 MSRP. I like using that example because it shows sort of the real severity of the situation, something that literally triples in its MSRP price. Now, you may be thinking prices are coming back down now. That's going to be better. You can finally buy a GPU, maybe even that 3080 for $700 that you would want, right? Not so fast. We weren't the only ones paying attention to this massive amount of demand. It was also Nvidia, of course. If we look at the market now, one of the reasons you may not want to build a computer, even if the GPUs are available, GPU pricing is ridiculously high. Nvidia introduced their 12 gigabyte 3080 to replace the 10 gigabyte one. Not too much performance gain there. Of course, you're going to have some more CUDA cores, a little bit more VRAM. The big change is a massive increase in price, almost twice the price of that original MSRP. So the last 2 years, we had what seemed like a relentless lack of stock, just this constant demand. Everything that hit the shelves, no matter how bad it was, people seemed to buy it. Now, this demand isn't only for gamers and crypto miners, and GPUs can be used for various other things, such as, scientific calculations, people doing machine learning and AI. So those sectors can also eat up a considerable amount of GPUs, not only sort of the Quadros and the workstation GPUs that you would think people would use. A lot of people actually end up using RTX 3000 GPUs, things like the 3090 with 24 gigabytes of VRAM, just because consumer grade GPUs, they're so powerful now, and it's not like there's a Titan or anything like that. The 3090 kind of replaced that sort of, standing in the Nvidia lineup that for most use cases, not all, people can use consumer GPUs. And generally, if you're working with machine learning, AI, things like that, they can gobble up a considerable amount of GPUs. I know that sometimes my viewers will point out that it's specifically not just gamers and crypto miners. There's a whole other sort of ignored section of the market, which is still a very large, consumer and buying base for, machine learning and different workstation type levels. It's just that they don't really get any sort of media attention. It's very easy to talk about gamers and crypto miners, especially when you pit them up against each other, because that's really been sort of the, the fight at this point. And at the end of the day, everybody's using these GPUs for something, and I guess people were just annoyed that maybe certain groups were able to get large amount of bulk or, GPU pallets, while one gamer had a lot of trouble getting a single GPU, especially at a decent price. So having said that, in terms of GPU availability, I guess you could say on one side it is a good time now, better than last year, to build a computer. You may actually find a GPU that's pretty good. The problem is you're going to be paying a considerable amount more. Like I said, Nvidia was paying attention this entire time, and their pricing likewise has changed. They even sort of dropped having an MSRP of the newest 3080. I think going forward that may be at least sort of the secondary GPUs they release, their strategy, because then it's a lot more fluid in the market. They can price it up and down and sort of, pass that ball on to the third-party AIBs like Asus and EVGA, who will always have much higher pricing than like a Founders Edition, for example. Anyway, Nvidia doesn't want to sell you a $700 3080 when it can easily sell you through an AIB like Asus a $1,500 3080. So that makes way more sense. It's not like they're putting $800 extra into that GPU from Asus. As nice as you may think the cooler may be on the more expensive GPU, or the RGB effects are a little better, it certainly is nowhere near that difference. It might be $50 better or $100 better if you really want to argue the points, versus like a Founders Edition. Some people may even say the Founders Edition are a superior design. I happen to think that the design is like really, really beautiful, very unique, very different than all of the other GPUs on the market. I mean, even something like a Strix 3090 looks not too different than last generation and the previous ones. Of course, little changes, but the Founders Edition cooler certainly looks considerably different than anything else on the market, and it's cheaper. That's why Nvidia doesn't really want to sell them to you, aside from those random Best Buy drops where maybe only a handful of people get a chance to actually buy them. So now let's balance out the conversation. GPUs are kind of available, but way too expensive still. Price is likely not to go down because the MSRP floor, Nvidia wants to hold that, and we're going to talk about the reason why in the last point of the video. We're going to balance this out with cheaper CPU prices. If you guys saw a recent video that I did, especially Ryzen 5000, it's pretty cheap right now compared to what it used to be. For example, you can get a 5600X, which even though it's a 6-core CPU, still mighty fine in terms of gaming. That was on sale for between $200 to $250, depending on if you go to Amazon or Micro Center, which certainly is a nice discount from the $299 price that it originally launched at. And then as you go up the stack, it gets even better with around $500 to $550, under $600 for a 5950X, which is a monster 16-core CPU. That's down all the way from $750 when it originally launched. Not only that, these are available pretty much everywhere. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to wait for a drop. That and the 5900X are now pretty widely available. In the beginning, they were fairly difficult to get, but after Intel's 12th generation came out, it came out actually with some sales right out of the gate. I think Intel had some issues with DDR5 not being available. I'm sure a lot of people ended up not even going towards the Intel route, just because at the beginning, DDR5 was very hard to get. Now it's easier to get, much like GPUs, but the pricing remains considerably higher than DDR4 for let's face it, you're not really going to get much more performance out of DDR5 at the moment. Eventually you will when sticks get better, when things just, So then you have that factor to consider. If you're building an entire new computer, you're going to get a very good CPU for a very good price right now. Now, when the new generation comes out, you may be tempted to want to purchase that, but keep in mind, those prices are going to probably still be very high when they come out. The stuff now, of course, is going to go down, but you have to see your use case. Are you going to be okay with like a 5950X, a 5900X for the next few years, or is it something you really have to upgrade every year? Even like a 12900K, 12700K, these CPUs, no matter how good the new CPU is, they can pretty much handle any game that you throw at them, even at 1080p. So you're just going to have to sort of balance out that value versus performance, which will at least a little bit, not entire way of course, make up for a little bit of that higher expense that you're going to be dealing with when you're looking for a GPU. And then the last point, RTX 4000 should be coming out at the end of the year that we hope, but there are going to be a couple of issues for those wanting to build now. First, normally you would think you've waited this long, why not wait another 4 to 5 months and try to get the new RTX 4000? A couple of issues with that. Now, RTX 4000, I think, out of the box is going to be very expensive. Most likely it's going to be difficult to get. I've even heard some murmurs from people talking about the next generation that it may actually be on sale at the same time as RTX 3000, so you would have them side by side. That means that likely Nvidia doesn't plan to mass produce RTX 4000 at the level of RTX 3000, and they want to take full advantage of people buying even anything that comes out really that they've experienced during the last 2 years. They probably hope that will translate to people still buying RTX 3000 even after the 4000 comes out. So certainly a lot to think about. And of course, we're also going to have RDNA 3 from AMD coming out. That likely has a chance to surprise in the market as well. And Intel is releasing GPUs this year. So there's a lot that can really go on still. We kind of talked in this video with the scope of Nvidia in mind, because that's been the one, let's face it, it's been the most in demand during the last 2 years. AMD GPUs have been in stock really perpetually, even the 6900 XT. Their problem is really high pricing, which is sort of what the Nvidia GPUs are replicating right now. Availability is there, price too high. We're going to see if more releases will lower these prices. That's what we need now. Not necessarily more stock. We need lower and more fair prices for the type of performance that people really need. People really want a $700 3080 level performance GPU. That's now the gold standard, even though it's completely disappeared from reality. We hope that it eventually comes back down to that, where a high-end GPU is well under $1,000, because as it stands right now, it's pretty ridiculous. So answer the video's question. I say right now is an okay time to build a computer. It may be worse in the future, so you might as well build it now. No point in waiting. We're going to have new technology come out like always, but at least now you can at least find some GPUs. Just be careful with the pricing, because some of them really aren't worth it for the price that you have to pay. Alright guys, so remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.